roar of approval for this crafter from Connecticut when she sculpts a mask that brings out her wild side. Next on That's Clever. Welcome back to That's Clever. We're on the road finding real people making really cool crafts. This crafter from Stratford, Connecticut unmasks the king of the jungle with plaster and fabric.
I'm Dailey-Mezzacappa from Stratford, Connecticut. I make masks. Today I'm making a lion mask. Welcome to my studio. I start my lion mask using a mask that I bought at a craft store and wrapping it in plastic. I wrap the mask in plastic to make it easier to remove once the plaster's dry. Once the plastic is secure, I cover it with plaster strips. The plaster can be bought in a roll at any craft store. I cut the strips at various sizes. I dip the strips in warm water and remove any excess water and then apply them to the mask, starting by filling around the edge of the mask and covering the nose and forehead and cheek area. I started making masks several years ago for a company holiday party, and I've been making them ever since. This mask is dried for 24 hours. Now I'm going to take it off of the plastic base and trim it. I use a craft knife to cut out the eyes for a more precise cut. This is the worst part for me. This sounds like nails on a chalkboard. And because I'm really going to wear this mask, I also have to put in nose holes. Then I use scissors to give the outside edge a quick trim. And while I have my craft knife handy, I poke holes in the side to tie ribbon. When my mask is all nice and trimmed up, I add a light coat of gesso to smooth the edges. Gesso is an acrylic primer that helps paint adhere better to the surface. I only coat the bottom half of the mask with gesso because the top half will be covered with fabric and the bottom half will be covered with gold paint. The gesso dries almost instantly, so now I'm ready to paint. I use the gold paint to give it a festive look. I love to paint. Sometimes I paint in acrylics and sometimes I paint in oils. And I really love bugs. I paint them a lot. Once the gold paint is dry, I use brown acrylic paint to add detail to the nose and the mouth. Once I have the details painted, I'm ready to start cutting the fabric for the forehead. I'm using a lightweight tan fabric to make it easier to glue to the mask. It has kind of a suede feel to make it look a little bit more like fur. I don't use a pattern, I just go around the mask. The fabric's all cut. Looks like it's going to fit just fine. Now I'm going to glue it with my glue gun. I start by gluing the outside edges first and then work from the nose outward. I have to use very sharp scissors because I need to make very fine cuts around the eyes and the nose. Now that my fabric's in place, I'm going to use glass bugle beads for the whiskers. I use white glue to attach the whiskers because it's a little less messy than the glue gun. I try to be careful to line up the beads nice and straight so the whiskers look even. Next, I cut 2 pieces of black ribbon to tie onto the sides of the mask so it's ready to wear. I also cut small pieces of trim to put around the eyes to prevent any plaster from flaking off. That is not fun. I use a nice brown velvet ribbon to trim the eyes. I have the trim all finished around the eyes. Now I'm going to add 1 piece of the same velvet ribbon around the chin. I also put the velvet trim around the chin to help prevent flaking of the plaster. I add a black ribbon trim around the eyes and the nose to add a little more detail. I've got all my trim glued on, and now I'm ready to start with the sequin trim. I'm back to the white glue on this one because it's less messy than the hot glue. This guy needs a lot of sequins. A a lot of sequins. I've already made a pair of ears for the lion using cardboard and the same tan fabric and velvet trim that I used for the rest of the mask. I've attached the fabric to 2 pieces of thin cardboard. Now I'm going to glue them both on with my hot glue gun. I looked at several photos of lions to get the ear placement correct. I could stop at this point to have a lioness mask, but I'm going to add a nice feathery mane. Back to the glue gun. I had to really hunt to get the perfect feather trim, but I found a great site online. The mask is done. This mask looks fit for a king, and I'm not lying.
Now it's back to Stratford, Connecticut, where Heather's giving an ordinary clothespin the geisha treatment with paper and paint.
Hi again. Here's another thing I like to make, geisha clothespin dolls. First I take a regular clothespin. I paint the top with a regular white acrylic paint. Next I take a colorful sheet of origami paper to cut out my kimono. I made a little pattern for myself to trace around the origami paper so I know about what size I need to make the kimono. Now I cut it out. Now that I have the kimono cut out, I'm going to dress the clothespin. I take regular household glue and glue the tabs together to form the kimono dress. Once the kimono is dry, I cut a smaller piece of origami paper that will make the obi or sash around her waist. Next, I cut a thin piece of black felt to wrap around the top of the clothespin to form the hair. I can't use regular white glue to put the hair on, so I use a hot glue gun. The hot glue dries a lot faster and I can hold it in place more easily. Once her hair is done, I'm going to add toothpick hairpins. I also use hot glue for the hairpins. The last thing I do is draw on the face with permanent markers. My geisha is done. I'll bet she's ready to write her memoirs.
Visit kforgraphics.com for handmade gifts, artwork, and more.